everyone. Welcome to Metro Focus. You know, the protests over George Floyd's death and police custody have ignited what some have called the next civil rights movement. And as we search for permanent solutions to systemic social and racial problems, we're reminded of another movement in our nation's history that was both radical and often misunderstood. The Black Panther Party fought racial oppression in the late 1960s and 70s, serving as a catalyst for societal change while also at times resorting to violence. The complicated history is at the heart of the documentary, The Black Panthers, Vanguard of the Revolution, which is now streaming on PBS and re-airing on Independent Lens this week on 13 and WLIW. Peabody and Emmy Award-winning filmmaker Stanley Nelson wrote, produced, and directed the film, and he joins us now. Stanley, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. It's great to see you.
It's always great to see you. Listen, I was going to leave this to the end, but I'm going to say it at the beginning. I got to watch the film for the fourth time in preparation for this interview. And this time, because I know the content so well, I was able to focus on the craft, and it's just masterful. It's just masterful. I hadn't even noticed that you didn't have a narrator before.
All right.
I mean, there's so many things, and I urge all of you filmmakers or wannabe filmmakers to DVR this documentary and study it, because this is how documentaries are done. All right, that is my unsolicited testimonial, Stanley. Let me start with the questions. You know, those of us of a certain age are probably pretty familiar with the Black Panthers, at least those of us who were paying attention to what they were doing at that moment in history. But I think a lot of our younger viewers are probably know more about their myth than their reality. Right. What's the reality that you wanted to convey in your film?
Well, I think that you're perfectly right. You know, we know the myth, and you know, I was around. I was a young guy when the Panthers came into being in 1966. But you know, my memory of how we looked at the Panthers was very different than how they've come down in history. You know, that you know, they had a bunch of social programs, and you know, that they were aligned in many ways with the anti-war movement and the women's movement, and they weren't out there by themselves. There was so much more to the Panthers than, you know, Black radicalism and violence. And so, you know, we wanted to give that idea to people so they could, you know, choose for themselves. I think so many times, you know, these movements or moments in history come down to kind of, you know, this myth, and we forget the reality. So we were just trying to talk about the reality of the Panthers. And we also wanted to talk to what they called the rank and file, you know, members. You know, the Panthers were not all Huey Newton and you know, Eldridge Cleaver and Bobby Seale and you know, Elaine Brown. There were also, you know, people who joined the Panthers. You know, so we want to say, why did you join the Panthers? Why did you stay in the Panthers? What did you do in the Panthers? And why did you leave? And so that made up, in some ways, a lot of the backbone of the film.
So what can Black Lives Matter and the other social movements who have taken to the streets or protesting since the death of George Floyd, what can they learn from the experience of the Panthers?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much they can learn, you know, good and bad, and we tried to show all that in the film. You know, one of the things that the Panthers were really great at is seizing the media, you know, and kind of taking over the media, and getting their message across. They were really great at that. One of the things that they were bad at is that their message had to kind of continue to escalate. That was, so their message, you know, might have started out here, but you know, it then preached more and more and more radical violence, and you know, kind of backed them into a corner that was very hard for them to get out of. And you know, and so that was crucial. I think also, you know, for better or worse, the Panthers were very much driven by personalities, by their leaders, and that was great in the beginning, and sloganism. You know, you could say "Free Huey" when nobody really knew who Huey was. You know, let's free Huey. You know, Eldridge Cleaver, you know, could be this great spokesman and speaker, and there were others: Kathleen Cleaver, Elaine Brown, so many others. But I think, you know, what happens and what you see in the film is, as these leaders started to falter, then the movement started to falter, because it was so based on these leaders. I think one of the things that's happening today, and this is a conscious choice, and a lot of times we don't understand that, but there's a conscious choice for this almost to be a leaderless movement. You know, we can't. There's not one or two or three people that, you know, we can say, okay, those are the leaders. You know, if you had to name who the leaders are, I would challenge anybody to name them. And I think that that may be a problem because it's an untested way to have a movement, but it also can be something that really works in this movement's favor, because there's nobody, you know, to bring the movement down if they
The power struggles.
yeah. So we'll see
Yeah.
what happens, you know. But I think what's more important is that right now this movement has taken off, that, you know, the multitude of people who are contributing and leading it, you know, I would say, you know, I'm going to back up and let them do what they're doing, because it seems to be really working, and they seem to be doing it really, really well. So who am I to say, you know, there's a different way to do it? I think they're right on, and what they've done is amazing.
You know, one of the lessons, it's funny you should mention all that, because that was going to be one of my big questions, one of my big points, and you jumped right to it. But the other big lesson I think that is often forgotten is to never underestimate how much the powers that be, the state, will use its power
Right.
when threatened, right? When the status quo is threatened.
Right.
Because that essentially, all else aside, that essentially, that all-out war against the Panthers is what ultimately undid them, right?
Right. And you know, I mean, and you have to understand, and again, if you see the film, you know, we talk about all that, and the Panthers talk about all that, you know, that you know, there were infiltrators in the movement, you know, and we're seeing that now. But the FBI, you know, they said that this is our main goal. This is our main goal. Our main goal is not foreign powers. Our main goal is not terrorism. Our main goal is to destroy the Panthers. And they had their phones bugged. They had infiltrators. The infiltrators would, you know, say stuff like, "Hey, you know, I saw your husband with another woman." You know, anything they could to cause dissension in the ranks. And so, you know, we have to understand that. And this was one of the first times those tactics were used. So the Panthers, in many ways, didn't kind of understand exactly what was happening to them. You know, they knew that something was happening, but nobody understood that, you know, the FBI and the powers that be could be so sinister, but also so petty. You know, nobody understood that. So I think, you know, we are clearer about what can happen. But, you know, we're entering we've entered into a way new age of surveillance of different ways that things can happen, and never underestimate the powers that be. I think one of the things that's happening in the moment that we're living in now is the powers that be are saying, you know, giving the movement its head. You know, it's like, you know, you give a horse, you know, its reins. You know, go ahead. You know, I got to let you run. I can't stop you. I'm going to let you run, and then I'll step in. You know, if you think that you can defund the police without an organized objection from the police, then you're wrong. You know, the police and the police unions are very, very organized, and will do anything, you know, to hold on to the power that they have and the money that they have. So I think there will be, you know, a strong, it's not even a backlash, a strong counter to what's going on now. And I think in some ways we're living in such a strong moment that you know, the powers that be are just kind of letting people have their reign. You know, you don't see a lot of Donald Trump right now. You know, you don't see him. You know, he does his little tweets because he can't help himself. But at some point, you know, they will reemerge.
You know, you mentioned backlash, and I was thinking, because I was there, I'm old enough to remember it all. One of the things that happened as a result of the tumult of the 1960s, in particular, the violence and tumult of 1968, was in part it led to the election of Richard Nixon, right?
Right.
In the
Right.
famous backlash. and the rise of George Wallace as a prominent national figure.
Mhm.
I wonder if you see, if you can elaborate, I guess, if you see that that could be a threat to this, to the demonstrations and the protests now.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is already a backlash. I think there's people are stealing themselves to, to fight it and backlash. I just, went to Cape Cod the other day, and we were coming off the highway, and there was a big Trump rally, which was just it's scary because what are you rallying against? I mean, are you rallying against the fact that a cop sat on a guy's neck for almost 9 minutes until he was dead? Is that wrong? Like what is it? But I think there'll be a strong backlash. I think that but I think what's important is that people who are involved and are getting out there in the streets continue to do that, and that young people, a lot of young people are involved in a movement for the first time, and the politicalness of their lives will stay there. It's not like some of them will just go back to their jobs and never say another word, but many of them will be politicized for the rest of their lives. And I think that's what's important. I think once you see that something's wrong in this country, once your eyes are open, it's like someone says in the one of the first lines in the Panthers, once you see it, you can't unlearn it. And I think that's what's happening now. People are seeing it, and I don't think they'll be able to unlearn it.
So, what is the most important legacy of the Panthers for us today?
I think the Panthers' main legacy is cultural. The Panthers changed the way we respond as African Americans. I was born, in 1951. So for the first 15 years of my life, I never, ever saw a black man put his finger in a white man's face and say, no, no, no. That's not what happened, and so, we never saw that. The Panthers were in your face and said, no, we don't have to wait. And that's where we are. And I think, that's a legacy. The legacy is mainly cultural.